morning. My name is James Hambamatsu. I'd like to convene the October meeting of the SRO Taskforce. Usually we go around the room, people introduce themselves. Jordan, would you like to start?
Jordan Davis, tenant rep.
Good morning, Bruce Burge, operator.
Sam Patel, operator.
Dan Jordan, tenant rep.
Peter Keith, City Attorney's Office, Legal Advisor.
Good morning, Diana Martinez, Mission SRO Collaborative.
Larry Kessler, Department of Public Health.
Good morning, Clifford Gilmore, Central City SRO Collaborative.
Kitty Fong with Supervisor Jenkins' office.
And we also have
Jennifer Chungju, Administrative Support, and Trina Gomez, Administrative Support.
All right. Great. Kitty and I have been talking about her coming by to talk about a couple of things, and as we go through the agenda, I'll bring her into the conversation. First is the approval of the minutes. Any comments on the minutes?
Actually,
Yeah.
I do have a correction.
Okay.
I think I remember from the meeting, like on the administrative announcements, Bruce Birch made a motion to amend the ordinance to add a third private, and it was actually Dan Jordan who seconded the motion.
Okay. Without objection, we'll make that correction. And anything else? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Diana Martinez makes the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Clifford? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There's no members of the public here except for Kitty. So the bylaws, there were a couple of changes we talked about last time. Peter also caught a couple of things. Thank you, Peter. On this one, we're going to where you have section 2. Number 5, the last one, we're just going to strike the bottom part of that sentence. So it should just say one representative from the Department of Public Health.
And,
Yeah.
and you're taking out one from Housing and Urban Health, right?
Yeah. And the other let's see, we had at where it says amendment, the very last clause, section 1, article 7, that would stay majority of the members of the task force. So we would take out the word present there.
So just to be clear, Jamie, the change would not be made.
Exactly, it'd be reverted to the Right, yeah. That change would not be made. That way it matches what we have earlier. I had discussed at the last meeting the idea of moving moving our meeting from the third Thursday to a different Thursday, and I still would like to do that. Maybe not for the next couple months, but revisit it maybe 2 months from now to see, so people could check their. I'll give you a heads up, and you can check and see. Yeah.
Jordan Davis for the record. I've noticed a lot of advisory committees actually meet in the evening, and I know it's kind of hard for people to get here. We rarely ever have a full house on the task force, and it's very hard for public participation if it's like happening at 9 in the morning. So like I would like to at least explore the idea of having something later in the day.
Okay. So when we get to that, we will take a look at that. Are there any comments on these that we have in front of us today on the bylaws? Yeah.
Will say that I do support the vast majority of the bylaw changes, but Article 4 voting, like the 7 threshold can be a little high, and Bruce Burke made a good point that there'd be if it was down to members present, it could be 4 people determining policy. So I really think there needs to be a happy medium here, and we need to figure out something there.
Okay, Bruce.
Yeah, not to, Sam and I don't seem to have complete package. You guys talking about something that we don't have a copy?
Look at the very end of that.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, could be in
It's
there.
on the agenda.
It's at
My
the end of the
apologies.
agenda.
I stapled them all together.
No, I never read that far. Thank you. Okay, now we're on the same page.
Yeah, okay, Larry.
Larry Kessler, Department of Public Health. I had a question about Article 2, Section 7, the use of alternates. So I'm assuming the member is the individual and not the department. So if we did have to have an alternate, that alternate would not be able to vote. That would also apply to city employees as well. For the use of alternates. It's unclear. It's possible you can interpret the bylaws to mean that that whoever shows up instead of the employee is appointed by the director. Correct. I mean, so under that interpretation, the substitute from the department for the day would be able to vote. But it's not clear from the bylaws, and it may be worth making it clear if we believe in that.
Well, it says,
If we believe it should be the correct approach, then perhaps the bylaws should say it.
this alternate does not have voting rights.
Right, so the question is if a substitute from one of the 3 city department seats designated in Article 2, Section 2, Number 5, if a substitute city employee from the department has to go to a particular meeting, we may want to just treat that individual as not an alternate, but as a member for purposes of
Okay.
the meeting, I think. For the sake of clarity, since it's not clear under the bylaws right now, that's an amendment that could be made to make it clear if that's something that people believe is appropriate. do that amendment, I think we'd want to change the last sentence of section 7 to this alternate does not have voting rights except an alternate, city department employee designated in Article 2, Section 2, Number 5 does have voting rights. Something simple as that.
Yeah,
That's something that would allow us to proceed more efficiently.
that could be a good idea. Now, it says that this employee is appointed by the director of the agency. So, somebody sends us an email saying, oh yeah, I'm filling in for Larry. Do we just go run with that, or?
I mean, there's an argument that that is already permitted under the bylaws, but I don't think it's clear an argument can be made the other way. My suggestion is that it might be good to have something clear in there anyway.
Move on to Nikki for the record. I think how it would be implemented is really up to this group. So I think personally, if I can't make it, I need to let my supervisor know, I need to let you know, and I need to ask the alternate that I asked, to go, to be on that email, to make it official. I wouldn't just have somebody show up and say, hi, I'm here for Margot. That I don't think is very professional.
But it's unclear whether they could vote.
Right. Well, no, I know, but that was a question.
So if we add this language, that person would be able to vote.
Yes.
I mean, that's what they're saying, yeah.
Okay.
But how we communicate.
Any thoughts on that? Reactions? Any objections to that? Okay.
So do you want to propose, should I propose some language for amendment for that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it would be, this alternate does not have voting rights, except a city department employee member under Article 2, Section 2, Number 5, who attends as a substitute for the normal city department representative, does have voting rights.
As a substitute
As a substitute
for the normal city department employee would have voting rights.
It's not the most elegantly phrased thing, but
It's
I think
okay.
it gets the job done.
Thank you for that. Other comments on the bylaws? Yep.
Jordan Davis, all I am going to say is I do plan on voting no for this, only because the 7 is a little too stringent if you consider that that there are actually, like, I barely remember a time when there's been a full house, and it's been so infrequent that we've ever had a full house. So I'm dropping my bid for a simple members present to pass something, but I would like to see a compromise between a potential 4 set if bare quorum is present and a hard 7.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other comments? Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce Burge. A quick one on the section, I think it's section 2. Section 2 appointments. Number 2, 2 private SRO owners or struck manager and changed it to operators. I'm not sure I understand the distinction, or why it would be necessary to make it so.
That was a Rosemary change. Did someone else come in? We've been talking about this for a few meetings now. I can't remember how we got that change.
Margot, for the record?
Yeah.
I wonder if it was done because if I think of SRO manager, I think of the person, I mean, I didn't make the change, but when I think of SRO manager, I would think about it mostly as maybe the property manager, and maybe the attempt was really not every owner operates a building, so there might be
Like somebody who has a
someone else
lease.
who operates it,
Yeah.
yeah. Just suggestion that that might have been the reason. So operator is more inclusive, I think. Less specific.
Other thoughts?
Clifford Gilmore for the record. Under Article 2, Section 8, with regards to dismissal, it clearly states the bylaws speak directly to an attendance policy for dismissal. I'm just wondering if the bylaws go beyond dismissal, or there are other violations that are in the bylaws for dismissal other than attendance.
I don't see any. Yeah, I guess the main reason for dismissal would be not showing up.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
Jordan Davis for the record, I do have some insight on this. Generally, we don't necessarily want to necessarily have the board dismiss another member. Like, generally, if it's other than attendance, like, it usually goes in, the Rules Committee can hold a removal proceeding. It very rarely ever happens, and should only happen when somebody is so disruptive and somebody's so, things have gotten so, like, out of control that it would necessitate the removal. So I don't want to see that bar lowered.
Okay.
Otherwise, like, politics could play into it.
Okay.
To answer Clifford's question about other provisions, I mean, there are provisions besides the bylaws for removal from city bodies under different standards. As Jordan alluded to, that the standard is pretty high to be removed. But there are overall standards that apply to every city body.
Right.
So the dismissal one would be one that's just on top of that, on top of those existing standards that apply throughout the city.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So we have a change about the use of alternates. Can we make a motion to pass it with that change?
Point of clarification, it says that any amendments would have to have a 10-day notice. So if I'm understanding correctly, wouldn't like any changes to the changes already made here like trigger an automatic continuance in certain parlance?
Yeah, you might be right. Peter, would you agree with that?
I'm looking at the language. I think so long as there's been notice that a particular section is going to be changed, I think if we then do subsequent tweaks to the language of that section at the meeting, I don't think that triggers another 10-day notice requirement. Looking at the attendance, looking at the provision that we just discussed regarding the use of alternates, that is something for which we didn't have 10 days notice. So I think in the interest of making sure that we follow the procedures and not have this upset, I think it makes sense to treat that as something that does need 10 days notice. So I think we probably do need to recirculate these at the next meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we will do that. Thank everybody for your input. I think we've come a long way on this subject. Item 5 is the SRO Taskforce Ordinance. And Kitty Fong has been helping us with this. This is part of the packet. It's got legislative digest at the top. And we tried to make it, especially the digest part, trying to make it clear exactly what we were trying to do. So it says that we're amending the code to extend the sunset date by 3 years, which is the maximum we can do. Eliminate 1 seat and change the membership on 1 seat, and that's due to human services not being part anymore. Now we have Department of Homelessness, supportive housing. So it's pretty simple. Katie already got it introduced for us, so we're very grateful to her. Do you have anything you want to add?
It is now under 30 days rules, so after October 25th, we'll be able to schedule to rules committee.
All right, great. So that really helps us with, keep us on track to have it approved by the end of the year and keep us going. Yeah.
Question, will we have to then reapply for reappointment, just clarification?
No. Any other questions? All right, great. The SRO directory. We've had some changes made to this. I think it's a very positive effort by our group here. And I want to thank both Jennifer and Trina for helping us with this. Does anybody notice it? Yeah.
Margaret, for the record, for the record, it's beautiful. Scott Walton is still on the first page. Keeps on getting in our way. So.
Thank you for catching that.
Sure.
Just a typo.
Oh, okay.
On page 13, see the bottom, the fax number for Chinatown CDC. It should
There's a
be
zero
a
there.
dash instead of
Okay.
an O.
Thank you. You still get a lot of faxes? Angela? You receive a lot of faxes still? No.
No.
It's not the way it used to be.
No, no. No, even no.
Yeah.
Just on page 5, you have Department of Public Health with one phone number, then you have Environmental Health with the same phone number. We probably just combine those.
Okay.
Department's a pretty big Department of Public Health, but if we just call it Department of Public Health Environmental Health Branch, with just
Okay, great.
that phone number.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I don't know if you want our address on there as well.
So you want me to put
I
that?
guess you have it down below. in the next one, so.
You mean the Fox Plaza?
Yeah, the same address you have under pest and vector control.
Well, yeah, let's put that address up there.
Okay. Put it up there too? Okay.
And if this is specifically for residential hotels, we can change the number for pest and vector control to 3805.
All right,
And
good.
then we can leave the environmental health general number at the 3800.
So
Okay.
this one's 3805. All right, great. That's excellent. Yep.
Marty, for the record, I'm just texting to the head of the head of the homeless outreach team,
Oh,
just to make sure that this is the accurate information. And I'm sure I'll get it just right back.
good. Excellent.
What page is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on page 16. Because that could really be the input for navigation centers. I don't know that should be in there because we don't call the hot team to get into the navigation center, the hot team finds you. And then I also just want to make sure that it's the right number. But I'm pretty sure that the reference to navigation centers needs to get out.
Yeah.
Small typo here, Project Homeless Connector should be an E between the M and an EL.
Great. 16.
How come I
We
see-
have two 16s.
Oh.
Wait.
Could never have enough.
I have only one.
I have two.
On
We need to-
on the page that says immigration issues, just be 17.
Yeah.
I'm missing that page then?
The rest is
Oh, I have it.
Mine says 16.
Oh, how interesting.
You have 216.
Yeah, I have two 16s too.
I have 17. How funny, huh? Maybe I changed it. I don't know. Okay, what needs to be changed?
Okay, so there's got to be an E here.
Oh, okay.
And
Thank
just shows you how many drafts we had to do of this thing.
And then one more thing that they mentioned.
She's looking up the hot team phone number.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to wait.
Okay.
for
Yeah,
that.
you can just
Right,
text.
I mean, that's
You
a
just let us know.
clarification.
Mhm.
Okay. Trina, is that one of you?
Okay.
That phone number?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's checking that. Okay.
And also, like, we could take this mail to, like, info@lionmartin.org, like, on page 9, under Lion Martin. You can just strike that out. That might be a typo, and that's, like, just a little weird.
We only need the first one.
We only need, like,
Okay.
lionmartin.org, and just strike out the last line with the mail to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is great. You guys are catching a lot of stuff.
Great.
Yeah,
I just have a general question. Is this document going to live online somewhere?
it is online. Yeah.
It will be, and where will it be located?
On
Do we know
the
yet?
SRO Taskforce page. All right. Thanks everybody for their help. Kitty and I were talking a little bit about grab bars and bathrooms.
Supervisor Kim is definitely interested, but she also understands that there's a lot of concerns and difficulties in enforcing the grab bars in all bathrooms, including private bathrooms. So she respects the task force decision and want to see what you guys have to offer or suggest.
Jordan was talking about this a little while ago. Do you have anything you want to add?
First off, full disclosure to everyone, I didn't ask for this to be necessarily ask for this to be on the agenda, but it just came up. And, well, of course, the big controversy last year was that we wouldn't talk about this because there was so much concern. But I just want to say that I don't think we should necessarily oppose expanding the grab bar ordinance to include private bathrooms, but we shouldn't. But I'm not going to go out of my way, especially since I don't have the votes here. But I would like to make a few points. However, one, I'm speaking to a lot of tenants in Tenderloin Housing Clinic's SROs that have private bathrooms. A lot of them already have grab bars, mostly because of a reasonable accommodation, and of course, like, whenever a change of tenancy happens, that grab bar ends up staying in there. I can't imagine any hotel owner would want to rip it out because they're a disabled tenant is no longer a tenant, and an able-bodied person is in there, because that would be
Okay.
that would be a little weird. But I'm pretty much agnostic at this point. It's I don't have a grab bar, and even though I'm pretty physically healthy, I mean, I do a lot of walking, let's just put it that way. I mean, I am a bit of a klutz on my feet because of my disability, and sometimes, if anybody can be prone to trip and fall. Anybody can, trip and fall and then have hip problems or hit their head or anything else. But I'm noticing, I feel like a lot of the concerns are largely unfounded due to the fact that there's already technology that's long on the market that would deal with the expense, and there's also sensitivity around civil code, as I understand it, around unit entry, which would have to be considered. So it would either, one, have to be a complaint-based process, or two, have it be have the law only kick in after change of tenancy or disability accommodation. So basically, if a tenant vacates a unit with a private bathroom, the owner-operator would have to install a grab bar between tenancies.
Okay.
And that's a compromise I'm willing to accept.
Okay. Are there other comments on this subject? Sam, and then Bruce.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Bruce Burge. Just to be clear, the member here keeps calling this an accommodation, a reasonable accommodation. I assume under the ADA it's not. It's a reasonable modification. And the owners, I don't think we have any owners that we've talked to that would oppose a reasonable modification to a bathroom for a tenant who needs it. Now, the problem that the member has here is that that cost would go to the tenant. They would be responsible for doing the install. Now, the tenant seems to think that this is a very minor issue and it doesn't cost very much. And if that's true, then let the tenant pay for it. We don't have an obligation. We don't have a problem with that. And further, as the tenant stated, I don't think we would make anybody take it out when they vacated, as long as it was put in properly. Now, that would require a permit, I believe, but that's a DBI type thing. So the DBI can comment on that. So that would be our position. I think it's also singling out the SROs is really bad legislation. I mean, if you're going to do this, then what about all the apartments in San Francisco that have private bathrooms? I mean, let's make this, if you're going to do this craziness, let's make it a citywide project and see how happy everybody is.
Thank you, Sam.
So, following what Bruce was saying, I mean, the cost to install these things is not cheap. We have to get permits, so we're talking about each individual unit. You have to get if a tenant moves out, you gotta go get a permit first. Then you basically have to rip out the bathroom, and landlords are not gonna just rip out their bathroom you gotta put backing behind it. And I don't care, because there are certain, the inspector, once you pull a permit, they're gonna say, well, how do we know there is a backing behind it? How are we, I mean, there's a minimum, I believe it's 300 pounds that you have to have weight on it. And you can't just screw this into drywall to say, okay, there's a grab bar to put up there. So there's a lot of things involved in this thing. So before legislation happens like that, I'm hoping that all these avenues are looked into before we decide. And that's part of the reason this grab bar issue has, we voted it down. I don't know why it's even back up.
Other comments?
Yeah, Bruce Burge again, and the one thing that wouldn't be clear to me at this point is I have a number of mixed-use buildings that we're responsible for, where we have maybe 2/3 are actually tourist rooms, and 1/3 are actually residential designated rooms. So do I only have to do the residential rooms, or do I have to do the whole building?
Jordan?
The issue that I brought up was that a lot of the people who seek reasonable accommodation in the private in their private bathrooms, or like reasonable modification, is because there's a lot of people aging in place and a lot of disabled people who seek these private bathrooms. And this is like, I'm thinking about THC buildings a lot, where there's a reasonable accommodation to get into a unit with a private bathroom. So it's if there's like a reasonable accommodation, not a modification, to like get into a private bathroom, it usually is disability related, and they're usually like many of those disabilities might even necessitate a grab bar. So we got to think of disability in a holistic way, and we got to think about like who's in these SRO units that have private bathrooms, and not and putting people before profits.
Okay. Margo?
Margo Antonetti, Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. If you're talking about master lease sites, it's very much something that we have on our mind: aging in place, people having disabilities, people getting more frail, people being frail in the first place. So that isn't something that needs to go through a legislative process. We can very much take on the conversation with THC and the other groups that we have contracts with, and just talk to them about, and this is not private SROs, this is, master lease SROs that are nonprofits that we have contracts with, where we would need to, then also possibly putting some money in the budget. So I don't want to make any promises of what that would look like, but if there's a concern about it, I think it can be addressed in another way, if you're mostly talking about master lease properties.
So I think to clarify what Margo's getting at is that they have contracts with certain organizations that work in particular hotels, and it could be an issue that's resolved by working through the contract process with that group and with that hotel. Yeah.
Just to correct, I'm not saying that that would be how it happens, but it's certainly something that's in our contracts that, there need to be accommodations for the referrals that we make, and most of the people who have been experiencing homelessness, many of them do need certain things. And so that's something that could just be addressed in a different way.
Yes, Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce Burge, I would have to, I think, respectfully disagree, because quite frankly, all of the master leased properties are owned by private individuals.
I know.
And that, well, no, but the underlying language in the lease is what controls. It's not the contract between the nonprofit and the city. So if the city tells the nonprofit, install the damn grab bars, it's the law, then the nonprofit is going to go to the master lease to see who's responsible for that. And I know who's responsible for that.
Yeah, Margo?
Sorry. So I didn't say it would go into contracts and it becomes law. We address, like you said, a lot of times somebody will move out who actually had grab bars and now they're still there. So this would be more of an issue of making sure that if there is a request for accommodations or modifications, that, you know, that is always taken into consideration. I'm not talking about put them into all the units. That's not an expense that we could promise to handle, but we're certainly looking at the fact that a lot of the master lease sites are aging in place too, and that is something that might need to be needed more in the future, but it is something that we should be paying for.
Bruce?
Bruce, well, if you're saying that it's not become a law or an ordinance, then yeah,
I
I have
just.
conversations
yeah.
all day. We don't,
Yeah.
that's fine with us.
I'm
Okay.
just talking about taking it back and just making, you know, a concerted effort of something that we're doing already, which is make sure that if people need a modification, that we do whatever we can to put that in place.
Yeah, and I don't think the ownership
So
would
that's-
have
Yeah, that's all.
any opposition to that, Sam. I mean,
Okay.
But it's really just a, you
I
know,
really appreciate that, Margot.
it's in place already, you know, the thinking. I
Yeah.
think maybe we just need to support it, and, you know, whenever we have some extra cash, we use it for capital, or we ask people, what would you like to do in terms of capital improvements? And so those are the kind of things that can be used for. We just don't think that needs to be legislated.
Okay. Kitty, you have any comments?
Yeah, it's a technical question about how much does it cost to install a grab bar, and how does the process look like with the permit?
Well, it's, you're not tearing apart the entire bathroom. There's a small section that is required to be looked at and permitted.
So, so for going for the record, I believe when this came up some time ago about the grab bars and installation, and I think there was a grace period for property owners to sort of be able to sort of bypass some of the permit process if they got into it early. I think TAC paid $1,500, I think, per unit for grab bar
And
installation.
a lot of these were the ones that were in the public,
Yes, exactly, not private. Yeah, they were, yeah,
like in the common area.
common areas, yes.
Okay, Bruce?
Yeah,
2,500.
to comment on Clifford's, there wasn't a waiver of the permit, there was a waiver of the cost of the permit.
The permit fee.
Oh, that's
still
right.
needed to be
Right,
pulled,
right.
and there
That's
still had to
right,
be
that's right.
inspections.
Right.
And you're right,
Yeah.
it was all on common areas.
Right.
And yeah, I think 1,500 to 2,000
That's
is
what I figured.
an average. I mean,
Yeah.
some are easier, some are more difficult.
Right.
Okay,
You
thank
know,
you.
it's like anything else.
Yeah.
Any comment?
The only comment I have is we talked about the wingets at the last time we discussed this, and it's actually a fastening system that can be used in lieu of blocking. And I've checked through everything. I know DBI looked at it. It may not work in all walls, but like it should be. If you can find like a alternate to blocking that gets us to 200, at least 250 psi, then we should go forward with that, and it's actually much cheaper to install.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's willingness to sort of offer really positive suggestions here. And so I think we do have some good avenues to work with. I don't know if that necessarily means we have to bring Kitty in. So if there's no other further discussion, I'd like to move the item to the next item. Okay, without objection. Number 7 is going to be reports from SRO Collaborative. Deanna Martinez.
Hi, good morning again. The report from the Mission SRO Collaborative is that we have hired a new administrative assistant a couple months ago. Our new administrative assistant took a job somewhere else, so we have a newer administrative assistant who will be starting on October 31st. And that is all for now.
You were working on a couple of cases. Remember there's one on Utah.
Yes, the 1312 Utah, there's a private SRO there that was dealing with some habitability issues and some unpermitted construction. Working closely with DBI inspectors. A lot of the NOVs have been, after I double checked with Michael Weiss, one of the city attorneys, he let me know that the majority of the NOVs were either abated or very close to being abated. So that's good news. Just recently, we did get another report from a tenant of unpermitted
Okay.
construction. So one of our team members, our outreach and code enforcement coordinator, has been in contact with the EBI instructor there to make sure that matter gets cleared up.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate all the work on that. We think the owner is Nancy Pelosi's son, but it's a little squirrely as to exactly whether he admits that or not.
That's
Thanks,
pretty
Kitty.
wild. A reporter from Mission Local kind
Yeah.
of told us about investigating it, and that's what we found, so
Yeah,
it's interesting.
very interesting. Clifford.
Clifford Gilmore, Central City SRO Collaborative. From September 6th to November 6th, every election cycle, whenever the election, we do a voter turnout push, primarily in the Tenderloin area. Statistically, the area tends to have lower turnout. So it concludes on election day. We've had some pretty good results. It's also, we were going back to 2016 to people who we knew in the database had voted in 2016, see if they're still around, encourage them to get to make sure they vote and actually vote by mail. And then also, we're trying to register some new Tenderloin tenants. So wraps up on election day.
And what else is the collaborative up to these days in terms of direct service?
Direct service, we still are doing our stabilization work within our department. We have people coming in still with some landlord issues. There's still some with pest issues. So we have in our program private hotel organizers who are actually doing outreach and trying to work with management to address those issues.
Thank you. Angela.
The Chinatown SRO Collaborative, one of the building on Vallejo is moving toward a director's hearing because of the management and the neglect of the building. So that's one. Another building's tenants are still working to settle a lawsuit against the management of the building. So there are a couple cases.
Have you had any community events or what's that called? Super Sunday?
Super Sundays. That's the families called collaborative.
Oh yeah. Well, Raul's not here. Maybe you
It's
should-
going up, coming up this Sunday. We're going to have a fun day. That means we'll have booths for families to come and play games. So it's this Sunday.
And with the kids and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of our families because it's not part of the funding for the families collaborative, but they have been turned out for Prop C, just to push the Proposition C pass.
When the and then for the families counselors, we're going to have a training session
This coming
next Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah. So if anybody else wants to participate in training for sort of identifying hazards that you might see, like a fire alarm system or people putting stuff on the fire escape, like safety issues. Anybody wants to participate, it's going to be Wednesday at 1 o'clock next door. And I'll be there. All right. Any comment on any of that? Yeah.
Jordan Davis for the record. Thank you for doing that, Cliff, around the voter registration. One of the things that I've actually been talking to a supervisor about this is an old provision in the visitor policy around get out the vote efforts, and it would be beneficial if candidates, now of course you'd have to let in any any candidate, like anybody can sign in any candidate. We have to be fair here, like to go in and meet the tenants, because often SRO tenants, many of them experience isolation, and they often experience a lot of disconnect from the world of politics and the issues that affect them. So I feel like that there's some interest around that, but that will be like far into the future.
Okay. Any other comment? Okay, item 8, future meeting topics. I know Clifford had brought up something about service animals.
Yeah, Clifford Gilmore for the record. So I would think it would be helpful to have some, I guess, clarity around service animals versus companion animals. That I think would be very helpful because I think there's some ambiguity about what constitutes what. I mean, not what constitutes what, but people are using or interchanging them with different animals.
Okay, so we can add that. Anything else? Yeah.
Got a couple of things. This might be more housekeeping, if you will, but there's I learned about the Brown Act during the BCLI, and I know a lot of boards and committees in San Francisco as well as elsewhere in California have to undergo trainings around that. So I feel it would be beneficial to discuss the Brown Act and how you could unintentionally get yourself into trouble, and how to stay out of trouble, and how to things work around because it's like the open government law in the state of California. I know the Sunshine Ordinance is also expands upon that, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing is rent payment methods. Like, I keep bringing this, I just want to keep this up, and I've spoken to this is about the issue around some nonprofits under HSH's jurisdiction allow people to pay by check. Some require a payee, whether it's third party or a representative payee, and some allow, THC allow some tenants to pay by money order, but no check. And I'd like to. I'm willing to collaborate on a policy that allows for tenants who wish to and are able to pay their rent by check, and balancing the need for people to stay in their homes. If someone's not paying their rent, then I could see the modified payment program as a convention. But
okay,
I'm
so
just gonna,
we'll note that as a topic.
And also I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but since we mentioned Prop C, we could, since we'll be on the other side of an election next month or months after, should Prop C pass, we should have a discussion of what that means, because that would interchange a lot with our mission. And also Prop 10 is on the ballot, and we don't know if which would repeal Costa-Hawkins, and I don't know whether it's going to happen, but if it does, miraculous Costa-Hawkins does get repealed, we should have a discussion about expanding rent control, because that also interlaps with our subject matter.
Other topics? Yes.
I would like to reflect a little bit on Clifford's topic about the service animals.
Okay.
Considering I just got one Saturday, and the rules are anything can be a service animal. A snake, a dog, a cat, a bird, a mouse, a rat. All you got to do is go down to the SPCA and get the service animal tag.
Okay, so we'll save that discussion for next time, and we'll get all the way into that. Peter, have we had a discussion about the Brown Act?
Well, so there's a standard package of materials that our office gives out. It's called the Good Government Guide, which covers Brown Act issues. If the board is interested,
I apologize. Are you guys going to be in here at 10:18 a.m.?
Oh, it's a big quake.
Yeah, we're having an earthquake drill.
We're almost done. We're wrapping it up.
Oh, I see. You're not going to be in here at 10:18. No. Okay, great. All right.
there's a section of the Good Government Guide. What perhaps I could do is distribute the link to the Good Government Guide and page references. So that'll give, and there are sections that discuss the Brown Act and essentially ways to make sure you don't unintentionally violate it. So that's a resource that we give to every city body.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, is there any general public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Dan Jordan, seconded by Jordan Davis. All right, thank you very much.
So you're going